Hi, guys. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest for you. We have Mark Blutman. He's an Emmy award winning writer, producer known for Boy Meets World, Girl Meets World, Ghostwriter, and Spy School. Let's welcome Mark Blutman to the show. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to do the show. Love the opening music. Ready to rock and roll. Let's have some fun.
So, Mark, can you let our audience know where we are recording with you live today from?
I'm in a undisclosed location. I have a lot of people looking for me, and I prefer. No, actually, today I'm in Las Vegas. I go back and forth right now between LA and Las Vegas, and I'm here now, chilling. During the pandemic, I don't have to be in LA as much. I have a lot of family here. My kids are here. My brother's here. My parents live here, who unfortunately both got COVID about a year ago. So then I've been here pretty much since, helping my brother kind of help them rehabilitate and all that stuff. They got slammed pretty hard by the big C.
Oh gosh. Well, are they doing a little bit better? I'm hoping.
Well, they survived, so that part's good,
Oh,
right?
great,
They
great, great.
survived, so I would say they're doing better than had they not. But they're in their 80s, and so they have what's called long COVID, and they're not the same. They used to live on their own and go out all the time on their own and text the grandkids and all that stuff, and now they're in a nursing home, so it's not a lot of fun for them, and it's been a long year.
Oh man, yeah, it's
Yeah.
affecting all of us, and but so happy they're so fortunate to have you be able to do your work and remote. So that's one of the good things that remote. A lot of people can work remotely, and so that is helpful. So you can be around
Yeah,
loved
the
ones.
last year I've been in development, so I can write from anywhere, and I have a really cool place here in Vegas, and I'm hanging with the kids and helping my brother with the parents, and it's all good, man. It's all good.
And you getting any show ideas about the Vegas, the big the casinos?
No, I'm truth be told, I'm not a huge fan. Of this place, and no, so it generally the only time once in my career, and we're talking 30 years of writing. I've written a lot of stuff, probably 350 half hours of television, probably 8 features, 20 pilots. Only one time was a location paramount to what I wrote. And about 2 years ago, it's interesting. I grew up in Montreal. People who follow and know that I lived in Montreal for many years, my teenage years, my formative years, all that stuff. And like most people, you grow up in your hometown and you can't wait to get out. And I couldn't wait to leave Montreal. I mean, I hated everything about it. The language barrier. I mean, je parle français, mais c'est difficile quand même. I speak French, but it's still difficult just the same. And I couldn't wait to leave, especially when I stopped playing hockey. I was a hockey player growing up, because that's what they do. When you're a little baby in Canada, they take you and throw you on the ice. And if you
Oh
can
my
get
God.
up and skate, then you're going to play hockey. But I had a knee injury, all that stuff, and my hockey career was over, and I started doing comedy, stand-up comedy, and I couldn't wait to get out of Montreal. My parents moved to the States. My brother moved to the States. We didn't have much family because my dad's originally from Jersey. So most of his family, of course, is in the States. We didn't have a lot of family in Montreal. So for 20 years, I never went back. Aside from 2 Just for Laughs comedy festivals in the late 80s. But then 20 years, and then about 4 years ago, I went back for a funeral, a family friend, the dad, he was like 90 something, and we all went back. And all of a sudden, during that time, you know, you don't think you're going to go back somewhere for a funeral and then fall in love, because you're at a funeral, you're at a cemetery. But I fell in love, not with a person, with the city. I fell in love with the city again, the very city that I couldn't wait to leave. And so I said, I want to set a show here. There was a great writer way back in the 60s and 70s named Mordecai Richler, and he wrote just a lot of incredible stuff, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, and all these incredible lies. My father told me these incredible things set in Montreal, and nobody has really said anything in Montreal since. And I went, I want to set a show here. And so I basically ended up writing a show called All In, INN, about a bed and breakfast in Montreal run by these older people because their daughter met a guy from the States, left when she was 18, grew up in Florida, raised the kids in Florida, all that stuff. And then the parents got old, needed help, so the family moved back to Montreal. And it was a pilot I had done, and it was with Aaron Kaplan, Capital Entertainment, who's the most prolific producer in television. Every show, Santa Clarita Diet, American Housewife, Divorce, The Neighborhood, all these great shows are his. And we were working on All In together, this wonderful show set in Montreal about this family that goes back and runs the family bed and breakfast, and the kids learn about the world through the guests that check into the All In from all over the world. And it looked like we had a shot at ABC, and like a lot of things in development, it didn't end up happening. But that was the one time where location was a character, a real live character in something I wrote.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. So you grew up in Montreal, Canada, and you were ice skating. And then how did you go from ice skating to stand-up comedy?
Well, let's call it hockey. Ice skating is more of an Olympic event with spinning and sow
Oh,
cows
yeah,
and
the
triple
hockey.
axles. I was not a figure skater. Let me make that perfectly clear. Although, interestingly enough, on one of the teams I played on when I was like 15, 16 years old, they would teach us power skating and how to get the most power out of our legs when we are, tearing up and down the ice. And they would bring in figure skaters to actually teach us power skating. And at first we're like, no, we're a bunch of dudes. We're not going to. And they taught us incredible technique, which made us better skaters. Now, to answer your question, I ripped my knee up. I was 16, 17 years old. I was getting recruited by schools in the States, University of Vermont, Middlebury College, Bowling Green, to go play hockey. And ripped my knee up. And back then, surgery wasn't, the way it is now. Now you go in, arthroscopic surgery, you're back on the ice or field or court in weeks. Well, my knee was messed up, and I was a goalie, and I just couldn't play anymore. And then, to tell you the whole story and your listeners, because it is kind of cool. My journey is kind of interesting, and I don't mind sharing it. So I love comedy. And, I'm 16, 17 years old, and I had a buddy in Montreal named Stephen Padveen. And every Saturday I would go to his house at 11:30, because at 11:35 Saturday Night Live came on. And it was back, in the original cast, Jane Curtin and Gilda Radner, Lorraine Newman, Garrett Morris, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, I think I said, just this incredible collection of comedic geniuses. And me and Steven would watch. And we were in awe. But we were also funny dudes. And we went, this could be good for us. Let's write some sketches. So me and him would get together in the afternoons after school, and we would write these 3 to 7 minute comedy sketches, commercial parodies. We would create characters, all that stuff. And one day we felt particularly ballsy, and we said, you know what? Let's send him in. Let's send him into Saturday Night Live. And so we did. We made a couple of calls. We were good. I was especially good on the phone at getting information. And, nowadays everybody, you just kind of Google and you look and you could figure out people's email addresses by, the pattern of the company and blah, blah. Back then, you just had to be good on a phone. And I got Lorne Michaels, who's the executive producer, a legend.
Wow.
I got his office and spoke to his assistant and said, we were told, this wasn't true. I just said, we were told to contact you because the head writers, Franken and Davis, requested our material. Like that was not true. But she gave us the address. And about 2 weeks went by. We sent in the stuff, a package with, a good amount of material. And then Stephen calls me one afternoon and he says, "You're not going to believe who I just got off the phone with." And I went, "I have no idea. Like, who?" And he goes, "Lorne Michaels." And I went, "You mean Lorne Michaels' assistant?" "No, Lorne." The phone rang and the woman on the phone, I forget her name, maybe it's Sherry or something. It was a long time ago. Anyway, she's like, "Hi, I have Lorne Michaels for you." And he was like, "Oh my gosh." And Lauren got on the phone and said, your stuff is really funny. I'd love to have Al Frank and Tom Davis. They're the head writers. Just we'll send you plane tickets. Come to New York. Now, we had never done anything professionally in our life. We had no resume, and we were kids, faces filled with acne, changing voices, whatever. We were kids, literally. And they didn't know. We flew to New York and we get, let in, and we walk in 30 Rock, the famous 30 Rock, and we knock on the door, and Franken and Davis were in their office. They were just coming back from hiatus, ready for the new fall season. And one of them, I remember it so vividly. Tom Davis is on the floor, actually plugging in a lamp. Al is putting scripts in a bookcase, and we go, "Hi, guys." And they looked at us and they paused and they were so shocked to see kids. And then Tom Davis, who was plugging in a lamp, his funny reaction, I mean, maybe it was funny in 1977, I guess. I don't know. He pretended he was getting electrocuted. He was like, and then Al Franken goes, "You guys are kids." I know my Al Franken's a lot like my Lorne Michaels, same voice. But he said, "You guys are kids." And we went, "Yeah." And he's like, "But your resume said Second City. Didn't you guys work at Second City?" And I said, "Well, no. Under the heading comedy, I put Second City because we're big fans of it. We like it." And he goes, "You guys should be embarrassed. Don't you feel like just horrible how you fooled us into thinking you were adult comedy writers?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but don't you feel embarrassed that we actually pulled it off?"
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, "Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I get it. Come on in." And we met for an hour, and they were super, super cool. And we didn't get hired, but that was the beginning. And, then during the season, there were 2 or 3 little commercial parodies that clearly, not accusing anybody of anything, this was a long time ago, statute of limitations. But there were some commercials they aired that were very eerily close to stuff we wrote. We weren't upset. We were actually flattered and went, "Damn, we're really good at this shit. Let's keep doing it." And so we were attending a school in Montreal called Vanier College. In Canada, you would have 2 years of CEGEP. It's the equivalent of junior college before you would go to university or college. So we're in the school and we said, "Let's put on a show." The old "let's put on a show." We're like, "Let's put on a show." And we'll hire a cast, we'll audition kids, we'll put a cast together like Saturday Night Live, and we'll get a band and we'll do it and sell tickets. It'll be great. So we went to the student union and we did our little pitch, and they went, "Okay, here are keys to your office and you have $3,000. So we're like, "Oh, wait a minute." So my first year in junior college, I have an office, a big office too, right near the cafeteria, and I have a budget of $3,000. And so Stephen and I started writing the show, and we auditioned people in the school who were theater majors, whatever. And it's interesting. To this day, one of the people that was one of the funniest people in our cast, his name is Arthur Smith. We're still in touch. He's now a huge producer in LA. He produces Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay. He produces Titans with The Rock. That agility competition show. So he went on to a huge career in LA. As did I. But anyway, we hired the cast. We sold tickets. We invited the press. We got rave reviews. And now we're selling T-shirts and pins all over the school. So besides the money we were given for the budget, which maybe we spent half of it, uh, we were making another few grand on T-shirts and all that. So like we went to Florida that Christmas, me and Steven, on the school's dime. And then we came back in the spring and did another version of the show with new material, same cast. And it was amazing. I always think about it. And, 2-3 weeks ago, Meatloaf passed away. And one of the big numbers in Vanier Live in our show was we had the band was, kind of behind the curtain and stuff. And we did the scene where a guy and a girl, blah, blah, blah. And we played Paradise by the Dashboard Light and acted it out. And so it was amazing. And from that, so Steven and I opened the show with a comedy routine, and then a comedy club in Montreal called Stitches opened up. And they were brand new, first comedy club in Montreal. And we went down, auditioned, and we got hired because basically all 5 acts that showed up to audition got hired. And so we started performing at this little place on Crescent Street called Stitches, where the stage was a dance floor. It fit maybe 70 people in there. There were 2 bars, and people would sit at the bars and in the middle. And literally, if you had to go to the bathroom during the show, you would walk on the stage. So we'd be performing and people would walk on the stage. But then, the owner, he's passed away. His name was Ernie Butler. He would bring acts in from Toronto because Toronto had Yuck Yucks for many years. And so he'd bring headliners in, like Jim Carrey, and people from New York like Glenn Hirsch and Rich Scheidner and Larry Miller, and from Toronto, Howie Mandel would come in and perform, and it was just amazing. And that's actually where Howie and I and his wife met. And, we've been friends almost 40 years now, and we were just a bunch of kids putting on comedy, and that started. And I was smitten and in love with show business. So that's kind of how it started. And I went on a nice 15-minute rant off your question of how did you go from ice skating, hockey, to comedy. But that kind of was the beginning of my trajectory.
Yeah, and so you're in Canada, and then so how where did you move next? You said you moved back to
I went to LA.
You went to
I
Los
went to
Angeles.
LA. Yeah, when I was about 22, 23, so early 80s. I just, by then, okay. Well, again, I might as well share because people who know my story know this, but you have an audience that is not as familiar with me. So I somehow, during my early stand-up days, I created a character, a persona, who was an ex-wrestler turned stand-up comic called the Crusher Comic. And I would wear a wrestling mask and tights and these beautiful, bedazzled, long velour robes like Ric Flair. And I'd come out to music and I would pound people in the audience and put them on my shoulders and airplane spin them. And just this crazy, manic, insane act. And next thing I know, people are just eating it up. They love it. And the way I came up with it too is one night we were doing a show in Montreal and it was horrible weather. And there were about 20 people in the crowd instead of the usual 100, but 3 of the comics couldn't come. So it was just me and another comedian. And we didn't have enough material to put on an hour show for these people. So I went, I have an idea. And I drove home and I had a wrestling mask because I was always a big wrestling fan as a kid, So I had a mask and I had just a regular bathrobe. And and the whole way back, I'm thinking, okay, I'll come on as this character. People will think it's a different character. They won't know it's me. And I'll just yell and insult the audience and all that. And I needed a name. Okay, what's the name? Comic, something comedian. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Crusher Comic. So I had the name. My friend, so I went on stage as Mark Blutman, did my show. My friend went on stage, did his show, and then he said, we have a special guest. It's his first time in Canada. Please put your hands together for Crusher Comic. And I came out and just yelled at these people, and they ate it up. And so now I put money into the act. I had designers design custom masks and robes. and wrestling was huge. It was the Wrestling and Rock and Roll Connection and Hulk Hogan and Cyndi Lauper and all that. And next thing I know, I'm on the cover of Wrestling World magazine. I'm headlining comedy clubs all over the States, and people are buying it. People really believe that I used to be a wrestler in the WWF, and now I became a comic. And so I took this act and went, all right, I'm going to go to LA with it. And I just literally, it was insane too, because this is wild. So I signed with a manager over the phone, right? There was no video conferencing back then or anything like that. This is the early 80s. And his reputation was, he represented acts like Sam Kinison, Paul Rodriguez, Andrew Dice Clay, all these incredible comics. So I figured, wow, I'll sign with him. Now, what I didn't know, which I found out when I got there, is he repped them all, but they all left him after a month or two because he was insane. So I fly to LA. I'm going to stay at his place for the first 2-3 months till I can get settled. And I've never met him. I've only talked on the phone several times. So he shows up at the airport with these two young kids my age. And I'm like, oh, who are these guys? Oh, this is Scotty Rubin and Doug Core. They're a big comedy writing team. I go, oh, that's great. Why are they here? He goes, and this is how he talked. He goes, oh, Crusher. Oh, I don't drive. Very many DUIs. Let's just leave it at that. I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? So these guys drive me to Harvey's apartment. Now, in my head, right, I'm a young comic. I'm moving to LA. In my head, Beverly Hills, swimming pools, movie stars, palm trees, all that. We drive to the Valley to Burbank. It's across from Warner Brothers Studios. It's one of those 2-story motel-style apartments. And we go inside, and there's no furniture. There's nothing. He's living the existence of like a mole person, like there's nothing. And then he points me to my room, and all there is a mattress against the wall. And I kind of throw it down, and I go, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And the kids leave, Scott and Doug leave with a good luck. And I keep my clothes on. I was wearing a sweatshirt. I put the hood over my head, tied it tight, and I lie on the mattress. This is night 1 in Hollywood. Welcome to Hollywood and the dream I flew in on, right? All of a sudden, I finally fall asleep at maybe 2 in the morning, and now smoke is billowing into my bedroom. And I'm like, what the? And I wake up, and this is after, of course, an hour of crying to fall asleep. Smoke is coming in, and I follow the smoke down the hall to Harvey, that's his name, Harvey Elkin, to his bedroom. I pound on the door, he doesn't answer. And I open the door. And in bed is this little troll of a man, no shirt on, the blanket's up to his waist, and he's leaning over, and on the floor is a hibachi, and he's grilling burgers at 2 in the morning in his bedroom. And I'm like, Harvey, what are you doing? He goes, oh, Christian, would you like a burger? I'm like, no, I don't want a burger, Harvey. It's 2 in the morning. And I called my parents. I said, you got to send me a check because I got to get my own place. I'll start earning money soon. And so I ended up getting my own place pretty quick. And I would say after 2-3 months, I left Harvey. And I mean, he was a character. He's not with us anymore. But he had this incredible gift for finding amazing young talent, but nobody would stay with him because he had no, he was like Broadway Danny Rose, he was like that kind of a character. And he was not polished at all. I remember one day, like it was day 2 in his, living with him. I finally got out a couple of weeks later instead of a few months, but I'm in the mirror and I'm looking in the mirror as I'm getting ready, and my face is completely broken out. And all of a sudden in the mirror, is Harvey standing there. And I go, hey, man, did you have the name of a dermatologist? Because I'm kind of breaking out. He goes, Crusher, I don't. But when you find one, make an appointment for me. I'm breaking out too. And it was just like, okay, no, I don't want this anymore. And I honestly, like, you have that brief moment where you're like, do I just go home? Like, this is like, what's keeping me? This is insanity, you know?
You finally get a manager, you get a place to live in, but, you're breaking out from the place and, surprisingly right,
And
like,
there's
some
but
kind of
there's always burgers to eat in the middle of the night, so that was good.
Oh my gosh, wow. I mean, you're pretty brave to do that. Pretty brave to go to this manager. But it's so exciting to get a manager, and especially when they have this incredible record of like all these,
Yeah,
amazing comics. But then when you go to the reality of the situation, people like we didn't have TikTok back then. We didn't have Instagram. We could have just been from the safety of our own home doing like you would have been like Instagram famous if you doing all the comedy stuff, but like you had to go physically move to LA with a stranger that you didn't know. And
right.
people don't understand all the risk when you come to LA, all the people you have to meet and growing
Yeah.
up at a time when we didn't have the luxury of the TikToks and the Instagrams and the YouTube to showcase our material at this young age because
But you have to, yeah, you have to understand also that the business was just different in more ways than one. It was show business, and those who traveled to LA with the stars in their eyes and dreams in their pockets and all that stuff. I love show business. I mean, I went to Saturday Night Live when I was 17. I mean, I loved, the front when I was 12 years old, my parents took me to see Sammy Davis Jr. Um, you know, and I loved old show business. And as I got into, when I was there and I started meeting all these comics and becoming friends with them. And of course, I knew Howie and his wife Terry, and I met Michael Rotenberg, who was Howie's childhood friend and then manager, and he's one of the biggest managers in the business now. And we were this group, and so without the support of that group, it would have been really, really difficult, and I probably would have bailed. But I had my family, and we all just did our thing. And Howie was years ahead in terms of his success. He had just been cast on St. Elsewhere, and he was doing his thing. But it was just they don't even call it show business anymore. I'll get hit up on social media from a young writer. Hi, I'm new in town. I'm a writer. I'm pursuing a career in television in the entertainment business or in the industry. I called it show business. It used to be show business. That's when it was glorious and fun, and all I cared about is what came before me and knowing the history and who were the great TV writers before me, the Stan Daniels and James L. Brooks and Gary David Goldberg and Norman Lear, and I was lucky enough. My very first job on a show called The Mighty Jungle, the showrunners were these legends named Bernie Ornstein and Saul Turtletop, who ran shows like The Monkees, ran shows like What's Happening, Kate and Allie, Sanford and Son, That Girl, all these incredible shows. And so I would just sit and pick their brains forever and ever and ever.
Mark,
And
on that note, let's. I want to break. Let audience come back with us to part two because we want to go over how Mark actually started. So let's end it here on part one. Everyone come back for part two with Mark Blutman, Boy Meets Girl, Emmy-winning writer director. Oh, so everyone come back and thank you for listening to part one with Mark Blutman.